Okay, members, we are quorate. I just advise members all mobile phones must be set to airplane mode and on silent or turned off. Just not sufficient to put mobiles in silent mode as they continue to interfere with the assembly recording. And just to be aware, this session has been recorded in video and audio and can be accessed live via on-stream either on the Assembly website or on Democracy Live. Members, apologies today. I have an apology from Gordon Dunn. Any other apologies? Okay, members, agenda item 2, minutes of our meeting on the 15th of June 2016. Members, minutes of our last meeting are on pages 5 to 8 of the pack. Are members content that those minutes are true and accurate of that meeting? Yep. Content that I sign then? Members, matters arising. I've no matters arising. Does anybody else? Anything? Okay, members, moving on then. Agenda item 4 is correspondence. Could I refer members to correspondence from the Commonwealth Association of Public Accounts Committees at pages 11 to 34. Members, this is an invitation to join as associate members. I just invite the clerk to give us a brief.
Thank you. Yes, this is an organisation that was set up about 2 years ago. I happened to be at a Commonwealth Parliamentary Association meeting in London for PACs, and at that it was decided that it would be beneficial to PACs to actually have its own Commonwealth association. So that was set up in 2015. Since that, there's been a further development, which was to open up membership to associate members, which would incorporate the likes of devolved assemblies and parliaments. An application would have to be supported by the national PAC, which in this case is the Westminster PAC, which has endorsed applications from the Assembly, the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Assembly. I suppose the benefits of this PAC being a member is that it opens up opportunities for networking and development, and it gives this Assembly, its own voice. I suppose, in a meeting of a much wider network of member associations. So, in terms of the membership, if the committee was to agree to apply, there's no membership fee as such, and it would just, as I say, open up opportunities to be involved in something wider, which would be a benefit to PAC.
Okay, Trevor.
How wide is it when you say the Commonwealth?
Well, it would be most of the countries. I couldn't tell you exactly, but certainly the meeting I was at, there was representatives from Pakistan, where else? Some of the African countries. I know at the time it was being opened up, to countries like Sri Lanka, and so from all corners of the world, really.
The likes of Canada, New Zealand,
Yeah, well,
they're all, yeah,
Australia.
yeah, they're all entitled to be members.
Are they members?
I can't remember offhand because at the time the membership, there was a lot of countries. I think from memory there was representatives there from New Zealand. I can't remember by Australia, but it is something that's open to them all. So,
members, are we content that we apply for associate membership on our own right? Yep. Members content? Okay,
Great.
Lucia, can you progress that? Just refer members in correspondence. Can I refer members to correspondence, page 35 to 38, and associated correspondence from Ross Hussey, MLA, and the Charity Commission, which is at pages 39 to 50. Just advise members the matter is referred to as subject to an ongoing judicial inquiry or judicial review. Can I ask members content just to note this correspondence at this time?
Great.
Content. Members' correspondence then is email correspondence from Mr Aidan Quinn at pages 51 to 52, which details his suggestion of areas suitable to PAC investigations. Can I just seek the committee's agreement to consider the issues raised in the correspondence at the committee's strategic planning session and then to advise Mr Quinn accordingly? Members content?
Agreed.
And also to write back to Mr Quinn just informing him of this action. Members' correspondence for the Committee of Justice at page 53, which advised that it wishes to be kept informed of progress in relation to the PAC inquiry into managing legal aid. Members, this is normal procedure, just to seek agreement to note this correspondence.
Agreed.
Content? Okay, members, moving on then, agenda item 5 is the inquiry into the Northern Ireland Events Company Memorandum of Reply. And I just refer members to the tabled MOR from the Department for Communities on the PAC inquiry into the Northern Ireland Events Company. I will advise members that the Northern Ireland Events Company has accumulated an estimated $1.2 million financial deficit. In November 2008, company inspectors were appointed by the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Investment to investigate and report on the affairs of NIEC. The inspectors completed their investigations in March 2014 and concluded that a total deficit of 1.45 million, 1.3 million of the 1.45 million, 1.3 million could be attributed to overspending on events promoted by NIEC between 2005 and 2007. The majority of these were related to motocross and supermoto events. The committee was informed that the total cost of NIEC's financial deficit was in the region of 1.6 million. These costs represent the amounts paid to outstanding creditors and administration costs incurred as a winding up of NIEC. The Public Accounts Committee was appalled at the level of mismanagement and impropriety associated with the Northern Ireland Events Company. Following its inquiry, the PAC made a total of 11 recommendations, all of which has been accepted by the Department. Can I ask our Controller Auditor General, Kieran, have you any comments?
No, it's very pleasing. All the recommendations have been accepted without exception. Just filling in, I think there were 4 categories of recommendation. The first category was there were lessons arising from the appointment of Chief Executive Janice Mcaleese. So that was a botched appointment process, and Janice Mcaleese didn't meet the shortlisting criteria. There was quite a lot of learning out of that. So there's 3 recommendations on that. They've been fully accepted. It was to do with appointments and shortlisting. Second category is around the need to ensure that the failings of the events company are not repeated, and the learning is read across the full public service. So that'll be recommendations 4 to 6. There's also a category of recommendations aimed at enhancing departmental oversight of arm's length bodies, be recommendations 8 to 10. Then finally, there were a couple of recommendations asking for the committee to be updated on ongoing investigations. One was, so there's still unfinished business on this case. One is an ongoing investigation by the Chartered Accountants Regulatory Body, CARB, into the auditors of the events company. So that's still active, and the department is to come back to the committee. And finally, there's still an active police investigation. I think at some point the committee just might want a progress report on how that's moving along. That's been long standing.
Okay. Kieran, just can I ask, have you any indications in the time frames of those 2 investigations?
No, I don't have I don't have any hard dates on either of those. No, not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Members, would you be content that the committee writes to both bodies to get an update onto those investigations?
Yeah.
Okay. Members, any questions on that MOR or the recommendations? Okay, members, they've all been accepted. Can I just seek agreement to request a 12-month MOR on update? Content?
Yep.
Okay, members, moving on to agenda item 6 is inquiry into the governance of land and property in the Northern Ireland Housing Executive, a memorandum of reply. Just refer members to the MOR at pages 56 to 67 from the Department for Communities on the PAC inquiry into governance of land and property in the Northern Ireland Housing Executive. Just advise members that following a series of events, maladministration relating to the disposal of NIHE land at Hardcastle Street in Belfast, which brought to light serious failings in NIHE's corporate governance regime. On the conclusion of the PSNI investigations, the Controller and Auditor General published his report in January 2016, highlighting concerns around the governance, leadership and ethical standards in the Northern Ireland Housing Executive prior to 2010. The Controller and Auditor General concluded that weaknesses in the Northern Ireland Housing Executive's governance and an inadequate internal control environment prevented it from protecting its own interests and demonstrating value for money and probity in some of its land deals with private developers. The PAC report was published in March 2016, and the MOR is the standard 8-week response to the 8 recommendations made in the report. All the recommendations have been accepted by the Department. Can I just ask again, Kieran, have you comments to make at this point?
No, again, it's very pleasing. All the recommendations fully accepted. You made the point, Chair, that some of these cases go back a bit. The reason why we wrote the cases up in 2015 was up to that point the police were actually considering a number of the cases, so we wanted that process to complete first, and that's the reason why the report came out at that stage. They're all very sensible recommendations. There are things like one very basic recommendation that declarations of interests of senior staff are publicly available. And the reason why the committee had to make a recommendation like that, there was a declaration by a senior executive, but his colleagues weren't aware of the declaration. So that's accepted. There are also very useful recommendations on assembly questions, making sure that the responses to assembly questions are accurate, and if there is an inaccuracy in a response, then the duty of the department to come back and rectify the situation. So again, those points have been accepted, and also lots of recommendations on governance and delegated limits. There were some important decisions on big deals made down the pecking order of the organisation that really should have come up to the board. So all of that has been acknowledged and accepted. So overall, I think it's a good response, and I think the executive is in a better place than it was a few years ago.
Kieran, just come back to the questions in regards to assembly questions. The Executive Office has provided clear guidance and protocols to departments.
Yeah.
Was that cited by this committee?
I think it's sort of we looked at the particular case. There was a number of angles on it. The requirement actually to come back to the Assembly if subsequently an error was found. So the executive, maybe in good faith, put in a response, and then subsequently it emerged, there's a bit of an inaccuracy here. So to close the loop, the British should be coming back to the Assembly. So that's a point of detail that I think hadn't been picked up before. So that's now registered and everybody's aware of it.
Okay, Michelle.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Kieran. On the recommendation around the land disposals, makes sense that land disposals of a certain value would have to go to the board, and I see that's been recommendation's been accepted. Whose value is it? Is it DFP value? I mean, you could get a valuation from the estate agent down the road, or you could get an official valuation. I'm just keen to see what the...
Well, it should be an official valuation. And you raise a very interesting point, because sometimes approval was sought before the valuation was done. So to get the choreography right, you get a proper independent valuation, and then go to the board. Yeah. So there need to be clarity around those sort of issues and the timing of the different parts of the process. Also then, if there are changes in a deal, and I think there was a big deal, trying to think which one was, whether it was Millmount or Annandale, where the terms of the deal had changed, and but given that it's a multi-million-pound deal, and that wasn't brought back to the board. So there's a wider issue here of just the board's grip on what was going on, the quality of the information going to the board. And one of the features of it's a huge organisation, the executive. There was a massive amount of paper going to the board. I suppose what we were saying, it's important that the right things go to the board, less paper, so the board members can actually see the wood for this reason, but real clarity on delegated limits. And so there was, in a sense, quite a cavalier approach to delegated limits,
Okay.
which and those need to be followed very strictly, not just in land disposals, but in other areas of business. So I think there are wider issues of corporate governance that emerged from this particular report.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Trevor?
I'm just looking at recommendation 5, Kieran,
Yep.
about tax planning. You're recommending that public bodies don't become involved in tax planning arrangements and have the primary objective of avoiding tax. Does that mean that the housing executive has been doing this?
No, it means that the people that they were dealing with, say if there was a disposal, the buyer is to make sure then that the purchasers' tax affairs are compliant. And I think the response actually deals well with this.
Does this mean that the executive has cooperated in some way with purchasers to do the deal in such a way that it's...
No, there was no insinuation of that. It's just maybe people didn't think about those aspects. Now, I think really what the department's now coming back and saying, if there's any doubt in such circumstances, public bodies should engage with HMRC at an early stage.
Yeah.
So if there's some unusual arrangement, say with a deal through the Isle of Man or whatever, it'd be prudent for the public body to liaise with HMRC just to check on the appropriateness of the arrangement.
Yeah.
Now, there's no hard evidence that there was any abuse of the tax position, but these arrangements are conducive to bypassing these type of constructs are there for tax reasons. So therefore, public bodies need to be alive when the people they're dealing with are using them and get appropriate advice. That's really all there is to that point.
Yeah, but it does say in the response that having said that public sector organisations should avoid this sort of thing, now it says it's recognised, or maybe it's where they shouldn't avoid it.
There may be exceptional reasons now. I don't want to go off of that.
Could you give us an example?
Right, okay. The housing executive itself actually pays corporation tax under this. There was an inspection, I think, by HMRC, and they would get advice on the. So that's money that goes out of the Northern Ireland block into Treasury. So there may be certain exceptional circumstances where maybe a tax thing could be challenged in the interest of Northern Ireland.
That's tax avoidance.
No, not necessarily tax avoidance. In the case of maybe the designation of, say, a part of the housing executive's activities are designated as trading. And part not. So it's very technical stuff, but there's the answers to that aren't black and white. No. And I think where there's shades of grey, then in certain exceptional circumstances, there could be a debate about it.
50 shades of grey here.
Yeah.
But it still seems to me that we're saying that there may be circumstances where the housing executive could perhaps avoid some corporation tax by doing things in a certain way. No,
but with agreement with the revenue, I think. Yeah, I think that would be an important caveat. I think always in these responses, departments would be very reluctant to give I suppose what you're talking about there is really a let-out clause. There may be exceptional circumstances where, you know, there's scope for debate. But that would be in the affairs of, I suppose, public bodies themselves. But it's also then, I suppose, incumbent when public bodies are dealing with private sector, that those they're dealing with are tax compliant. And that's just the general principle.
I can understand that the private sector would be wanting to do everything they can to legitimately avoid paying unnecessary tax. It's just the question of to what extent the housing executive or any other public body connives with them to bring that about.
Well, I don't think there's any question of conniving. With no evidence of that.
Word, you know,
With no evidence that it was just more that if there's some unusual arrangement, that is questioned and challenged, and that's really all there was to it. And I think this emerged because I think sort of the proceeds I think were been worked through an Isle of Man company, which sort of raised questions, and was that done for tax reasons?
Okay.
Really said, rather than the questions being raised after the event by auditors, they should be raised at the time by the people doing the deal.
Okay. Oliver?
Yes, earlier on, you said there was one land deal, there was arrangements that were changed, which really should have come back into the department.
Well, it's just the terms of a deal that changed. I think that was to do with clawback arrangements on a deal at Anady.
Well, those dealing with it would have known that.
Yes.
Was that ever investigated as to why?
Oh no, that was all looked at in the committee's report. We had a session on that. So that was one of the reasons for bringing it out publicly. So I suppose the point in here was where key decisions are they made at the right level, and was a board cited on them? So that's the point. So somebody down the organisation had made a call and that call really should have been done at board level and a proper paper going to the board. So that was the issue.
And what sanctions are they in place to one or a group of people doing that from the board? Would they just be told off not to do it again?
Well, certainly there should be sanctions. One of the problems here was it's come up where the board, say, had made an instruction that something should happen, but they hadn't a tracking system for actually following that through. There's a separate recommendation in here on that. At the end of the day, you know, where there were breaches, the people involved with them, some of them were actually in front of this committee during the last mandate. And it wasn't just the accounting officer, it was others actually directly involved where some of the rules appeared to be bypassed.
Would they not need to declare an interest of some sort to be involved in something like that?
Well, that was the whole point. Yeah, that was another facet of this study. There was other particular deals where someone was actively involved where they should have been completely insulated from the process. So that's accepted, acknowledged, and one of the reasons why the whole process around conflicts of interest needed to be tightened up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Declan?
Thanks, Rob. What was the overall quantum of the deals involved, Kieran?
Oh, I don't have a top of the head figure. Can I come back to you on that? I would have had at the time, but...
Can you give me an approximation, even if you can't be pound specific?
Well, you know, there was some deals, 60, 70 million. There were big deals.
Yeah.
But I can come back to you with a cumulative figure.
And were there many deals?
In our report, we focused in on 6 case studies. So we homed in on weaknesses on 6 particular deals. The one thing I would say, just on the quantum, the deal flow was at a peak around the peak of the property boom, 2007, 2008. If you're actually looking at quantum of deals the last couple of years, they're quite low.
Yeah.
So the ebb and flow with the property market. So there hasn't been much the last couple of years, but the deals we were talking about related back to the peak of the property boom.
And did the inquiry establish that there was a direct correlation between the spike in the deals?
Oh, there was, yeah,
That period. Yeah.
in that period. And I suppose some of it was actually a problem with the housing executive would have lots of little pockets of land, and in some cases were approached by developers, can we buy this? So there was a fairly direct correlation with the property boom and at that time.
Go ahead.
Just a quick clarification, Rob. When you do identify the precise quantum, are we going into a recess at committee level, Robin, or how can that information be exchanged?
That's freely available, isn't it?
Sorry?
Is that freely available, Kieran? Not at level?
Oh, that should be freely available. It's just not in my
Yes,
head.
no, I
today.
appreciate that fully.
Yeah. And we can get that fairly quickly to you.
Okay. Just pass that to Lucia.
I'll come through the clerk.
Thank you. Thanks.
Michelle?
Thanks, Robin. I'm interested to know where, on the back of these deals, where the money went. We have a shortage of housing. I know the housing executive don't have the authority to build social housing anymore, but we have a shortage of housing, and the current housing executive stock, Saville report found last year that 1.5 billion was needed to bring the current stock up to a reasonable and decent level. And that's not direct quotes, but presumably those 6 case studies that you're talking about, Kieran, if the money was able to go back into regenerating the stock in the housing executive, it would have went a long way.
Which, don't get me wrong, there was a lot of proceeds come in. It's just whether it could be better managed and controlled. In a few of the deals, I think we thought more could have been got, but substantial amounts of money did come in. No question about that.
Yeah, you just wonder, did they get best bang for their buck? And
in some of the deals.
And was the housing executive able to retain that money then, and was that part of your remit?
We didn't look at that particular aspect, and I would need to, I can check up on that, and just in terms of whether it was recycled or surrendered back into the centre. But
yeah, I suppose I haven't been in the assembly for a while, but there have been plenty of discussions in the media and elsewhere and in this building around, you use 2 phrases, unusual arrangements and bypassing the rules around procurement. So, I mean, nobody is above scrutiny, and the housing executive didn't exactly cover themselves in glory on some of their arrangements recently. So I'd be very annoyed if people are waiting 20 years on a new kitchen and they are selling big pockets of very valuable land to developers for less than they could have got for it.
Yeah. The one thing I would say, some of these cases are historical, they're going back 10 years. There has been a significant improvement in process this last couple of years in the executive, and I think we can see that. It's a big business, and this is only one part of the business. One of the things that we thought was that on disposals, maybe the board had their eye off the ball. They were looking at other things, so it wasn't part of the mainstream operation. These disposals then came to a peak during the property boom. There was more of them, and but there's not that many now. There's other big parts of the business we've been interested in as well, like maintenance contracts, etc. It's a huge operation, and it's a matter of making sure procedures are complied right across a broad range of functions. Also, I think it was clear in this report that some of the weaknesses here were unique to a particular division within the executive rather than systemic across the whole organisation.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. Kieran, recommendation 8, part of the responses, the Department for Communities has established a dedicated sponsor team which supports the housing executive in their delivery of executive and ministerial objectives. How does that either complement or supersede the board?
Well, at the end of the day, the buck stops with the accounting officer, the parent department. So the parent department needs to satisfy itself that there are proper arrangements for the governance of the NDPB, and that includes the effectiveness of the NDP board. So, for example, there would be, one of the things would be regular accountability meetings between the Minister, the Permanent Secretary, the Board Chair and the Board Accounting Officer. So that's part of the accountability mechanism. One of the big things here was, well, the parent department would have been getting assurances that everything was well from the executive, and I think what they acknowledged was that they needed to do a bit more test drilling to actually verify that those assurances were valid. I think that was a big point coming out of this, and that's been acknowledged.
Do you know who makes up that dedicated sponsor team, or at what level? Or
well, that's I don't have the top of my head, but it's a very good question in terms of what skills parent departments put into sponsorship. And when we looked at the previous one, we looked at the events company. I think there were lessons there on just the quality of sponsorship and getting the right skills. So you need certain skill sets, certainly in the sponsor team. You need finance skills in there in the mix. So you need people that can ask questions. You would also then have people from sponsor side would go along to the and attend the audit committee. So you need people of sufficient presence that can actually make their point across when they do sit in. And another one we looked at, the committee looked at a couple of years ago, was the fire service, and was the sponsor in that case, it was health department, that have sent people along, maybe at junior level, to the meeting. So there's a question of sending the right people to the right meetings at the right level. So it's really, really important then to look at the skills you need in sponsorship. And that's something right across the public service. You will actually see in the response to the events company one that DFB has acknowledged that that's something they want to dust down the rule book on and have a good look at. You'll also sort of pick up that post the events company there was a lot of critique on sponsorship that when something goes wrong then the parent department goes from hands off then to micromanagement. And so neither extreme is right. So there's a happy medium. What this committee has said, what we have said consistently, what is important is good strategic management, but not micromanaging or second guess in every decision that's made by the Quango. But sometimes when things go wrong, sometimes there's an overreaction, and I think that was acknowledged actually in the evidence session on the events company. So it's making sure that good skills in the sponsorship team, I think, is one of the key things, and that they're looking at the right things and taking a very strategic approach. And also, I think, it's probably more important than a lot, is good communication systems. And what actually really one of the lessons on the events company one was the chief executive was meeting regularly with the department but without the board chair. So the board chair was on site at a lot of things that was going on. So there's really lots of learning there on just how those relationships should work well, how there should be open communication, that there should be no surprises if something goes wrong, that if there is something wrong, it shouldn't be covered up. It should be escalated up then to the parent department. So a lot of cultural stuff in there as well.
Members, do you think, are we content to write to the department just to get clarification on the sponsorship team and their skills and who makes it up? and also to go maybe for a 6-month MOR, considering the queries that have been raised around the table. Members content?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, members, the rest of the session will be in closed session, so I just seek agreement that we do move into closed.
Great.
Members content?